Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of Constructive Criticism. I'm your host, Spencer, and I'm joined by my co-hosts, a Silver Pro and a Bronze Pro, both who just got back from GP Vegas at 5 a.m. the other day, Micheal and Matt.
Hey, how's it going?
You guys will have to learn how to do that.
Well, I had the cadence down really well with Casey, so back to square zero.
Yeah, I mean, I think basically we were both waiting for the other person to take it, and then, we both decided to go at the same time, so.
Yeah, it happens at a stop sign a lot, you just like, oh, maybe it's my turn. No, it's not. Oh, guess it, no.
Well, I'm excited, guys. I just got back from vacation. I took a week off. It was amazing. So I am refreshed and ready to do this. So, you know who else is really refreshing is our sponsors. You can check out Oasis Games at mtgoasis.com. You get 15% off your first order. You know, what's more refreshing than Oasis, guys? And 15% off, that's even more refreshing. So you can get 4% off of every order by using the code WITH-THAT-BE-GOOD. You can check out our other sponsor at Fusion Gaming. There are other sponsors, actually, the Mana Base. I think that they're connected, but I'm not sure. So maybe I should really be pumping the Mana Base because they pump us as up-and-coming content creators. They have Nikachu, the Mason Slayer. They've got all kinds of stuff going on over there. So check them out at Fusion Gaming and the Mana Base. And don't forget to check out Oasis Games for everything. They have Pokemon TCG. They've got Dragon Ball Super TCG. They got Magic. Whatever you need, they're going to have it. So let's get right into this. So the point of the show is hashtag always improving. We believe if you're not getting better, you're getting worse. Just like the rest of the podcasts on the network, whether it's Limited Time Only, hosted by Danny Cathro, or Common Knowledge, hosted by Pauper Championship Top 8 competitor Lobert from GP Vegas. There are other shows on this network that are here to help you improve, including this one. Typically, during this time of the show, we would talk about the things that we've done to improve this week, but we're actually going to save that as we have a really big deck doctor, and we want to use some of those things that we learned about during our training rounds, which is going to be lessons learned from GP Vegas. So with that being said, we want to give a special shout out to our patrons. If you want to support the show directly, you can go to patreon.com/ccmtg. Brandon E. and Tyler J. are two newest patrons. We really appreciate them. Both of them came in at $5, which if you do, you get access to the Constructor Critics group where you can submit a deck doctor. And this time we actually got a really cool deck doctor with some context and some sideboard guides. We won't be able to go over the entire sideboard strategy, but Micheal, why don't you go ahead and the message here and the deck list.
Yeah, basically it says, hey, I'd like to submit the Black Mid-Range deck for the Deck Doctor segment. This deck has gone 4-1, 3-2, and 3-2 in constructed friendly standard leagues online. And then he talks about his sideboard strategy as well as the cards he sees out of his opponent's decks. And it says, my most pressing question for the deck, in addition to 4 Vraska's Contempts, I have 1 mainboard slot and 1 sideboard slot for additional unconditional black removal, and whether I should use Never Return, Unlicensed Disintegration, or Hour of Glory. I'm currently using Unlicensed for both, but because this is not an aggro deck, the extra damage to an opponent isn't as impactful. I like having 3 drops because my curve is glutted on 4. Unlicensed is easier to cast than Never because of black, but never can get to Fairy later, and later hate the graveyard. Having 4 main deck Vraska's Contempts has been really good against Hazoret, Scarab God, Rekindling Phoenix, and Teferi. Hour of Glory is appealing because it can exile a lot of those same creatures. And then his deck list is 4 Scrap Heap Scrounger, 2 PNLR, 4 Goblin Chain Whirler, 4 Rekindling Phoenix, 3 Glorybringer, 2 Chandra Torch of Defiance, 1 Karn Scion of Urza, 3 Magma Sprays, 4 Braids, an Unlicensed Disintegration, 4 Vraska's Contempts, 3 Heart of Kirin. We're playing 25 lands, 2 Aether Hub, 4 Canyon Slow, 3 Cinder Barrens, 4 Dragon Skull Summit, 10 Mountains, and 2 Swamps. And the sideboard is 4 Duress, 1 Arguel's Bloodfast, 2 Glintsleeve Siphoner, 1 Doom, 2 Chandra's Defeats, a Glorybringer, an Unlicensed Disintegration, an Angrath, a Flame Chained, an Aether Sphere Harvester, and another Karn.
Awesome. So I want to do kind of a deep dive on this one, guys. This patron put in a lot of effort to kind of give us his thoughts, his sideboard strategies, and I think that with his post about his sideboard strategy, it's very clear that he knows what he wants to be doing in any given matchup. So I'd like to first off talk about the things that we really love about this deck and this strategy being a little bit bigger black-red deck. Micheal, why don't you go ahead first?
I guess the thing I would say that is the most just interested. What stands out to me the most is looking at the mana base with 4 Canyon Slows and 3 Cinder Barons, in addition to 2 Swamps. He's really making a good effort to try to play enough black sources and red sources to support both Goblin Chainwhirler and Vraska's Contempt.
Yeah.
Having not played with a list like this, I'm not sure that's actually possible, but I appreciate that he's not just playing like a normal black-red mana base, adding 1 or 2 sources. Like he's really added like 4 or 5 sources to what a lot of black-red lists.
And in addition to that, he's really made an effort with Magma Spray and the fact that there's no other 1-drops to be allowed, quote unquote, to play Cinder Barons.
Yeah, it's definitely less awkward in this deck than in most of the black-red decks I have experience playing.
Matt, what about you? Anything that really stands out that you love in this deck list?
Well, I definitely like the 25th land. I know that's not necessarily typical. A lot of people are playing 24, maybe 1 on the board. But in my experience playing black-red, the 25th land is definitely where you want to be. Yeah, I've not really played a deck like this, but I do like a lot of the things that you guys were saying. Like, I think that playing less 1-drops, like no Soulscar Mages, probably helps a lot to be able to play tap lands, and I think that the extra black sources are probably going to potentially make it reasonable to cast Vraska's Contempt.
Yeah, is there any thought to maybe... He actually mentioned Hour of Glory in the deck. Is there any thought to maybe splitting Vraska's Contempt into a 3-1 split? For the mana?
You're saying something like 3 Vraska's Contempts, 1 Hour of Glory?
Yeah.
Well, the problem I have with that is that Contempt is just better, right? If you have black, and you're really saying that, like, hopefully I draw Hour of Glory when I only have 1 black source.
Yeah, that's true. It doesn't make a lot of sense. I've seen deck builders make those kind of concessions before. What are your guys' thoughts on those typically?
I think it makes sense if you have any way to filter cards, but it doesn't really make sense in a deck like this.
Okay. Michael?
I can agree. I can agree with that to some extent. I think if we're just sort of choosing at random, we can either cast Vraska's Contempt or we can't. And, and the 3-1 is sort of the sort of split where all it really tells me is we probably can't play.
We probably shouldn't be playing Vraska's Contempt if we can't cast it. That's fair. I like that. Well, one of the things that I also really like about this is just it's really going after that Rekindling Phoenix, Glorybringer, Planeswalker feel, right? Where it's like I'm gonna play these like Goblin Chainwhirler and Pia to protect my walkers, plus a bunch of removal, and then and not even to mention Rekindling Phoenix. We all know that thing is a beast on blocking. But you know, Glorybringer lets you switch really quickly from protecting your Planeswalkers into attack mode. Like, good luck cracking back because you'll die. So I like that it's just going all in on that strategy.
This deck is very cohesive. I will say that. Like, it definitely wants to be the mid-range deck and understands that. I like that about it.
Yeah. So
whether that's good or not, I'm not sure. But I would say that, like, you know, obviously not playing the Hazarets, he understands that this isn't a Hazaret deck at all.
Yeah. So what are some things that we would consider changing? Matt, why don't you go first?
Well, it's hard to say without having tested this list at all. Like I said, I'm not 100% sure that I want to be in the mid-range deck in this format. Maybe, I mean, that is one of the appeals of Black Red is the fact that you can board up or down, and there's almost no way that you can go down with this deck list. I mean, if you look at the sideboard, he even goes a little bit bigger post-board in a lot of matchups, it looks like. So there's basically no way to get under a control deck at all. And I'm not sure that that's where I necessarily want to be, and I don't know that. I mean, the second swamp looks abysmal, but I get why it's there, right? Like you need enough black sources to cast Vraska's Contempt, but
that
honestly,
sorry.
The first swamp is awful. The only reason you run it is because Field of Ruin. Like you're basically hoping to never draw it.
Yeah, I had the exact same reaction at the very beginning. Was the first thing I saw was the 2 swamps, and it's just kind of rough. I've played a lot of Black Red on MTG Arena, and I even have played Mono Red and tried to play like a Scavenger Grounds in addition to my Ramen Up Ruins, and it was just so bad that it's kind of tough to have those swamps in there.
Right. When you say Ramen Up Ruins, I assume you meant Sunscorched Desert.
I did not. So for a long time, Ramen Up Ruins is actually legal on
ago?
MTG Arena. No.
Oh, really? Interesting.
Yeah.
They have a different ban list on Arena.
They don't anymore. Now it's the same ban list now that all of Standard is on there.
Okay.
But before the entirety of Standard was on there, Ramen Up Ruins was actually legal. Um, one thing that I do see that you might think about, and I know that Michael and myself, and I think you too, Matt, have all hated this in the past, but this deck might be able to get away with playing the Painland for artifacts.
Spire of Entry. So I haven't hated that nearly as much. I do think this list is actually insanely low on artifacts to do that, right? Like you're playing what, 6?
So you're playing
7, 8, 9?
6, 7. Yeah, is it only 9? Maybe it's not enough.
Yeah, I mean 10 super loosely if you're counting Karn.
Yeah.
This is actually much lower than most of the lists that are playing him already, because basically if you're playing Spire, you're playing Bomat Warrior.
Yeah, maybe you're right. Maybe I'm not into that. I thought it was 13, and I thought maybe that was enough.
Sure.
Yeah, honestly, even 13, depending on what you're counting, can be a little bit dicey.
Yeah.
Right. That in my experience, Bomat Courier is a little bit hard to count as an actual artifact, and like honestly, Karn is definitely not an artifact.
Right. My biggest question is just whether Goblin Chainwhirler is worth it. Like
in this list specifically.
I mean, I think this is sort of a generalized question that I have about Red Black a lot. But if you have to play Soulscar Mage and you decide you don't want to play Soulscar Mage, and you're not really particularly aggressive, so you're mostly just using it as a body to block. I wonder a little bit about how good it really is, just given that people have to respect it so much anyways.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that it's an insane blocker, but I also agree with your point that basically nobody's playing X1s that they mind dying to a Chain Whirler at the moment, for the most part, right? Like, you'll play some Glint Sleeve Siphoners sometimes because
card's insane.
The card's just very good.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would say that Chain Whirler has made the metagame less susceptible for itself. So it is possible that maybe you just cut the Chain Whirler from this deck, especially from a version like this that is trying to just play the mid-range deck.
I mean, just to play like devil's advocate a little bit, I mean, what if you just play like Walking Ballista, make your Heart of Kirin's into Aethersphere Harvesters, and then your mana base is no longer crazy bad either?
I was actually thinking about
even beyond that, if you play 4 Walking Ballistas, you probably actually could support the Spire of Industries.
Especially if like all you're trying to do is cast 4-drops with it, right?
Right, and you don't have Chain Whirler, so like you don't necessarily need triple red on 3 or whatever.
Right, you can actually afford it to be a color source sometimes. Anyways, I don't know that that's actually good, and it's a pretty big departure from like stock black red at that point. But at some point, you kind of wonder, when you're playing the 3rd Cinder Barons, is there any way this is possible with it?
And one of the things to think about in this Deck Doctor segment, right, is like, we won't have games with these decks, right? So it is us brainstorming as a kind of a group to talk about what we think we could change and what we would want to try, right? I mean, the number of times that we've all logged into MTGO, ran through was it you, Matt, that we were talking about, like the number of times that we've won our first match and then dropped because our decks were so bad still?
I mean, I don't know how many times I've ever actually just 1-0 dropped, but probably not very many.
Certainly,
it might have been Michael. It was me and Michael then. We were talking about it. I definitely have registered Sultai decks that I 1-0 dropped with.
I've certainly played round 1 and then, whether I won or lost, been just praying for the 3-2. Just like, oh my god. If I can get out of this with a 3-2, we're really doing it.
So that being said, when we're talking about these decks, like you're gonna have more. Our listeners are gonna have more games with us. So just take what we're saying with a grain of salt. With that being said, there are a few things that I really did like about the sideboard. I really liked the extra Glorybringer in the board. I really liked the extra Karn in the board. And I think that there could be a world in which mid-range decks can take over, especially we could get so inbred that everybody's focusing so much on Goblin Chainwhirler that it stops mattering.
Well, I think that was mostly the point that Michael was trying to make before, right? Like, Chainwhirler is something people have to play around regardless of whether you're actually playing it or not.
And that what I'm saying is that, to Michael's point, is that does open a door. Like, if I cannot play around it and other people are playing around it, it might give a deck with like black-red midrange, some kind of legs.
Yeah, I think the biggest advantage is that in a deck like this, like, if your first logical trim when you want to play a little bit of a bigger deck is Soulscar Mage, then you get to actually, and then it's kind of hard to cast Goblin Chainwhirler, you probably get to actually cut the 2 worst cards in the deck. Like,
Yeah, certainly the
I
Soulscar
would be
mage.
shocked if Goblin. I would be shocked if Goblin Chainwhirler is actually good with this many. Like, because of the mana requirements it gives you in this deck.
Right.
Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that you should be cutting Goblin Chainwhirler. It might mean that you should cut Vraska's Contempt and play a more stock black-red list. But I think if I were to continue pushing in this direction, I do not think I would play Goblin Chainwhirlers.
I have some questions. Where do we think that this list stands against the black-red mirror?
Assuming that the contempts are castable, I think that it's probably favored in the black-red mirrors.
Yeah, I would think that it's favored against mono red too, just because of, like you said, the way that the contempts layout and the way that your creatures line up against theirs. Now, Scrap Heap Scrounger's a little bit of a butthead in that matchup, but you're gonna turn him sideways anyway, right? And he's just gonna chip in damage. But I think you'd be favored against mono red also. What do we think of control, Michael?
I don't think you're going to be favored against mono red, and I also don't think you're going to be favored against control.
Talk to me about mono red first, and then let's go back to control.
I think you're going to be too clunky. I think basically any game you're on the draw, you're going to be a very, very heavy underdog.
Interesting. You do have an insane amount of 4-drops.
So you're playing too many 4-drops and too many tap lands. You're going to miss your 4s on 4 a substantial percentage of the time playing 7 tap lands.
Right. You don't think that you have enough removal to mitigate that?
No.
Interesting. Okay.
I don't think you can. I don't think there's such a thing as enough removal to mitigate that. Having played a little bit of mono red, I think the main advantage of mono red is anytime your opponent plays a tap land, the game's usually over. Well,
and beyond that, like, just 1-for-1s just don't work that well, right? Like, Magma Spray specifically kind of does, but like the Abrades being 1-for-1s and the Unlicensed being a 1-for-1, it's not the kind of strategy you can beat mono red with, generally speaking. Like, you need cards like Rekindling Phoenix that invalidate a lot of cards.
That's actually what I was thinking. I was thinking of the fact that, like, my front end is just killing their creatures, and then they have to stare down my Rekindling Phoenix and Goblin Chainwhirlers while I play Glorybringers and Planeswalkers actually does favor me with this deck against mono red.
Well, sure, but you're imagining a world where you're casting Rekindling Phoenix on 4 and Chainwhirler on 3, right? Like, if you have to play a tap land...
You only have 3 tap lands. Oh, no,
that's
7.
You have 7 tap lands.
7. That's a lot.
So, like, anytime you keep a hand with less than 4 lands in it and then draw the land off the top, like, it's potentially going to be a tap land.
Sure. That's fair.
And I think against control, I think you're going to be softer to... Oddly, I think softer to Teferi. I know that sounds bizarre, but the secret is that trying to kill Teferi either by attacking it or by Vraska's Contempting it is very, very difficult. And your best bet to actually beat Teferis, in my experience, is just to ignore them.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to be caught playing this deck against Teferi decks, to be honest. I would really worry about my closing speed against those decks in general. And like Michael said, like, you can't really afford to attack Teferi. It's kind of a losing proposition for this deck, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, it does look kind of rough, but you do have 10 sideboard cards for the matchup, and that's not nothing.
You do.
I mean, obviously, you have like 10 cards in the main that don't do anything, so it makes sense that you'd have that many. But
yeah, the biggest issue is that although Vraska's Contempt is okay against Teferi, it's not like it actually lines up that well. Like, it has targets, but it's a lot worse than like Bomat Career, right?
I mean, I agree with that. I mean, what I would say is that any removal spell, whether it's Vraska's Contempt or Lightning Strike, is going to have its drawbacks when you're playing against blue-white control with no creatures.
Right, so I agree with that. All I'm saying is that, like, it's hard for me to tout Vraska's Contempt in a matchup when what it's replacing is our best card in the matchup.
Our best card being Bomat Courier? Sure. Yeah, yes. That's fair.
I would say that I agree that... I mean, is that really how you want to look at it, though, Michael?
I think it is, because you are playing basically the same deck...
But you're making the concessions the way of Vraska's Contempt versus concessions the way of Bomat?
Yeah, I mean, I like, how many cards off this is Owen's PT deck if you just make Vraska's Contempt Bomat Couriers?
So here's my question. What would you replace the Goblin Chainwhirlers with if you did want to keep going down this line?
He said what is the
I would try Ballista and Siphoner.
There we go.
I would try Ballista, Siphoner, or Aether Sphere Harvester.
So you're going to replace the hearts with Aether Sphere Harvesters. Okay,
Yeah.
that makes a lot more sense, because I was going to say the hearts look completely uncrewable almost currently, and certainly if you replace the Chain Whirlers with anything else.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Well, I might be interested in trying some of this out after the RPTQ. I think that I'm interested in maybe finding a way to make mid range work. Michael, we both think that the blue black matchup is pretty bad. Matt, you're talking about the number of sideboard cards. Is there anything that we can do to the main to help that matchup if we were to go Michael's direction?
I certainly don't think that Ballista over Chain Whirler is going to help you, or Aether Sphere Harvester over Heart. Like, both of those changes are actually going to make your control matchup even worse. I mean, that being said, like, that might be fine. Like, turning a 2080 matchup into a 1090 matchup is not the end of the world. Like, you're already mostly saying that you just don't want to play against that deck if you're registering a list that looks like this.
Yeah, I mean, I was wanting to main some Siphoners, ideally.
Sure. That's the thing that you can do that would help.
Here's the thing. I don't think that's going to help you basically at all against blue black or Esper. I think it's going to be very good against blue white when you actually can decide when they get to use their removal spells.
But the fact that it's going to be their only target for Fatal Push, yeah.
Right, yeah, they just have Fatal Pushes. And
black really preys on black red. I think that's just sort of...
I mean, that's why it's moved in the direction it has, right? The way the format is going.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's why we've seen mono red pick up steam, because it's much better against blue black as well as red black. I think it's why we will see blue white pick up popularity, because it's better against mono red than blue black.
Yeah.
Is.
Well, let's move on from this. Thank you so much to Jonathan who submitted this deck. We really appreciate it. Hope there's our thoughts. Thank you so much. And if you guys, as listeners, want to leave thoughts on his sideboard plan and talk about this deck, there is a thread on the Constructive Criticism Family Group on Facebook. Thank you so much, Jonathan. I learned something during this, so I really appreciate it. I've been on vacation for a week, so my magic brain is like all over the place. Let's go into our card of the week. So every week on the show, we like to give out some magical cards to listeners. Well, we don't give them out every week. We give them out every month to one person. And this week, we're giving out a playset of Urza's Tower. So this is card of the week because I don't know how Tron did so well, other than the fact that like there was a lot of humans around. But guys, Tron did really, really well at this GP.
Did you not find or feel that it was well positioned prior to the GP?
Well, I did think it was going to be well positioned, but I think that Tron can be hated out. I don't know. I guess other decks came up too, right? I was a little surprised. Like how many people came to the conclusion?
Tron can be hated out by a metagame, but I really don't believe that it can be hated out by any cards. I think that if you're going to play against a bunch of combo, Tron is really bad. But I think if you're playing against a fair deck, they don't really have a lot of great ways to make their sideboard good against you.
Yeah.
I agree. I would also say Tron in general just has an extremely low actual fail rate.
It does.
A lot of your fair matchups, you almost can't lose no matter how badly you draw.
I mean, if they can't beat you by turn 6, like eventually you're going to start casting Ugins and Ulamogs and whatever else.
I think one of the things is I think Tron is a great deck, and I thought it was a great meta game choice. I was just surprised at how many people brought it, more than that it did well. I wasn't surprised that it did well.
A lot of pros really like Tron, actually. I think largely because it's pretty easy. There are a number of pros that seem to pick up Tron somewhat regularly and put up decent results with it, without it being like they're not Tron players.
Right. Cool. Well, speaking of Urza's Tower specifically, one of my Tron opponents that I beat made some misplays by grabbing the wrong lands. Is when you guys play Urza's Tower, what is when you play Tron decks? How important is Tower to get into play, and when do you typically put it into play versus the other lands that you're fetching? And is there any matchups that you really need to think about that?
I think it's mostly the same in every matchup, and generally it's honestly getting Tron is the most important thing. But if you have the option of which one to fetch in which order, you definitely want to fetch the tower last, because if you have anything you have to do on the turn that you're going to get Tron before you actually put all 3 lands into play, it will tap for the most.
That is correct.
Like, say you have to do anything with the other 2 lands prior, it's better to use those because then you have 3 mana left over instead of 2.
Yep, my opponent
being able
was
to
short
cast
on
Oblivion Stone.
Yeah.
game.
Yep, my opponent was short on mana because of the order in which he grabbed his lands.
Right.
And it allowed me to win the match. So
The flip side is you have to also recognize when you're going to have to Ulamog and when you are specifically going to try to need to get double tower on 4.
yes.
And then there are times where it involves leading a tower out. Like it's more nuanced than just saying always play tower last.
I was playing John Stern, and he did exactly what you were talking about. He realized that the Scapeship matchup wasn't. We were just play testing before the tournament, and he realized that it was just about Ulamog, and he made concessions like that.
Yeah, it's a little bit situation dependent, but I agree that there are some things that once it plays out for you a certain way a couple of times, it's pretty easy to see things coming and understand when you need to make.
I think there's probably just a broader view here. We could probably just say that there are exceptions to every rule in Magic, right? Like,
yeah, that's true.
Certainly the rules are there for a reason because they're mostly correct, but there's nothing that's so set in stone that you're never going to do anything else, right?
Right.
In Tron, it's just almost specifically Ulamog related because 2 towers makes 10 on 4.
Right.
That's like, other than that, it's pretty much always tower last always.
Yeah, I mean, Ulamog's definitely something to keep in mind.
Is there any decks that play Urza's Tower outside of Eldrazi Tron and green black and mono green and green red Tron? Oh, I guess mono blue Tron.
Right, yeah, mono blue and blue white used to be a deck a long time ago, but not really.
Yeah.
Just one play KCI once with Tron lands in it.
Oh, interesting. What was the reason?
That they were trying to cast Emrakul's or something. I don't know. This was a while ago. I don't think this is a common thing.
So yeah, it's mostly. I mean, if you see Urza's Tower, it's going to be in a Tron deck. But I wanted to mention the other 2 Tron decks that I consider not regular Tron, which is mono blue and Eldrazi Tron. We haven't really seen, MTGO. Sometimes mono blue Tron will do well, but we haven't seen Eldrazi Tron do well in a while. Michael, why do you think that is?
Well, I think Chalice of the Void is not very good.
Right now.
That's basically it. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, certainly he doesn't think it's a bad card. It's just in the metagame right now, it's not very good.
Yeah.
I think if 2 lands, Chalice of the Void on the play is good, Eldrazi Tron makes a lot of sense, and if that's bad, Eldrazi Tron is unplayable.
Okay.
I mean, it's also worth noting that Chalice on 1, which is something that's typical in other formats and other decks in Modern even, is always good. But turn 2 Chalice specifically has to be good for Eldrazi Tron to be good.
I like that take. Matt, why do you think that we see mono blue Tron on MTGO do well, but it doesn't do well in paper?
I think that certain people just like that deck a lot. I mean, the modern metagame online is definitely different than it is in paper. There's a lot more of play cards I own online.
There's specifically one person playing mono blue Tron online.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, I forget his name right at this exact moment, but yeah, there is one player that's putting up a lot of the results for Mono Blue Tron. Online.
Maybe over half lifetime.
Okay. Cool. There we go. All right. Well, let's get more into Modern Power Rankings. This is gonna be a short one, so we can kind of go over GP Vegas. Coming in at tied for 4th, we have Hollowed One and Grixis Death Shadow. We'll do Hollowed One first. What is so? This is
you not only spelled Hollow One wrong, but then you also called it Hollowed One. Man,
hey, you know what? You're just gonna deal. You're just gonna deal. So you guys actually played.
One.
It's the Hallowed One. Okay, what do you? You guys are gonna make me laugh so hard. You guys both played this deck at this GP.
Yeah, we played the same 75 to the same record.
That's true.
Yeah.
All right.
We had very different paths to get there, though.
Yeah, both ultimately pretty disappointing.
Oh yeah, for sure. But like, it's interesting that neither of us actually lost a match where the other person lost. Like we never lined up our losses at any point, so it felt like
one of us was basically always moping.
Yeah.
One of us was basically always moping. That was my takeaway from
right. Sounds like a tough tournament, guys. Let's talk about Hollowed One.
It's actually kind of funny once we realized it. Yeah.
Hollow One really quick. I'm gonna fix that. So what is considered stock and what is considered not stock for the deck on our screen?
Which list is it?
It's the Sigris list. So the main deck is 100% completely stock, and almost nobody ever deviates from that.
That's what I thought.
The sideboard is a little bit tuned, but mostly stock, to be honest with you. It looks like an extra Lavamancer, an extra... I don't have the deck up in front of me right now. An extra Engineered Explosives over the norm.
Push.
And an extra Fatal Push.
And he cut all the Terminate, Big Game Hunter, Blood Moon.
Yeah, there's a few flex slots in those 3 sideboard slots specifically. And it looks like he used those all for extra cards of the ones that are pretty common.
Of the ones that are pretty common. So this could just be stock.
Yeah, it's basically just stock Death Shadow or Hollow One, rather.
Yeah, it's at least like stock 72 or 73.
So what is? I mean, Michael, we literally were sitting at Oasis Games, and I was talking about wanting to play Affinity. You said you wanted to play Affinity. Neither of us played Affinity, but one of the things that you said to me was, "I'm not playing Hollowed One," and then you showed up to the tournament with Hollowed One. Like, what changed your mind?
It's a good time. It's proactive and powerful. It's surprisingly disruptive at times. And it is very Dredge-like in certain ways. So it's
I would
close
say
to things that I like.
The big difference between the list that he was probably talking about when he said he for sure wasn't playing it and the one that we ended up playing was the Thought Seizes in the sideboard. It actually does. It doesn't necessarily swing your matchups, but it does really highlight how good you are in those matchups post-board. Like, it seems like the Storm matchup would actually be tough, but I actually think the matchup is favorable for Hollow One because of how good it is post-board.
Okay. It definitely is if you're playing like 2 or 3 Thought Seizes.
Right.
Otherwise, I'm not 100% sure, but with the Thought Seizes, that matchup is definitely favored.
Right, so I would say that most of your combo matchups you're actually pretty happy to see with Hollow One. Probably not Infect specifically, but...
That makes a lot of sense. So if, we're expecting, green black X decks and control decks to kind of be bad this weekend, then Hollow One could make a lot of sense with the addition of Thoughtseize on the sideboard.
Well, and I would also say that a lot of the green black decks and the control decks really depend on their configurations. If the green black decks are running a lot of Scavenging Uses and maybe like Kalatos and things like that, then it gets pretty tough. Like green black specifically, I found to be a lot tougher than Jund.
Right, because Kalatos.
Yeah, Kalatos, and they often have what's the black Exiling Wrath?
Flaying Tendrils and
Flaying Tendrils, right?
Oozes.
And then they'll usually run all 4 Oozes. Yeah, exactly. They'll have a lot more of the things that are actually good against you. And the other thing was that we expected the control deck of choice to be Jeskai, which is actually a lot better matchup than blue-white, depending on their exact configuration.
Specifically, you tend to maul decks that play Bolt. Lightning Bolt is just awful against this deck.
Okay.
It just isn't really. It only kills Flameblade Adept.
Yeah, and then when you're playing against Jeskai, it's more like playing against 8 Lightning Bolts, so it's kind of great.
Well, next up we have the Grixis Shadow deck. This one's Bed Freeman's list. The reintroduction of Mishra's Bauble 100% of the time, it seems like the pros are really behind it, Michael. This is a deck you've played a lot of. Why don't you talk to me about that? Just being stock again from what I've seen from the last couple pros, but I haven't kept up with it on MTGO.
The main thing I think you're seeing is Faithless Looting making its way into the deck on a consistent basis, and in addition to that, you're seeing more Lightning Bolts over Fatal Pushes and main deck Teamer Battle Rages, and I think the deck is just leaning a little bit more towards like an aggro combo deck compared to like
when it was like a mid-range deck.
Yeah. Stubborn Denial is worse than it has been in a while just because of how terrible it is against humans. But you are still... There are less Chalice of the Voids than there have been in a long time in Modern. So that sort of natural predator is gone. And I think that this is one of the few decks that switches roles and is still proactive.
Yeah, I
get the appeal of this deck.
Well, you and I had talked a few weeks ago about Faithless Looting in Grixis Death Shadow specifically. And honestly, like when I look at this list, I really like it. Like this is something that I would be very interested in playing. Have you
Yeah,
guys tried things similar recently?
I don't know if I've tried anything like this recently. I've certainly tried lists like it in the past, and it doesn't fit my playstyle. I do get why they're doing these things, though. Like the Mishra's Baubles specifically add a lot of velocity to the deck, which is kind of what you're trying to do when you're adding Team or Battle Rage and things like that to the main deck. And cutting any of your super reactive cards or like grindy cards like Kolaghan's Command. So it certainly looks cohesive to me. I don't personally like the strategy, but I understand why they're playing it this way, and I do think that it is better positioned in this metagame.
I think that for me, I always, anytime I played the deck as like a Kolaghan's Command deck, I often found myself frustrated. And I think it's because I played so much Agenda and stuff like that. And I always preferred like the Sultai version of this deck, or the Agenda version of this deck. But this makes a lot of sense to me. The velocity thing that Matthew's talking about, those Mishra's Baubles, kind of make your deck smaller, right? So you're going to draw the cards, your 2-ofs a little bit more. You're going to draw your 4-ofs a little bit more, and it really makes having your game plan set a little bit better. And I mean, obviously, we've seen that with Gataxian Probe for years from certain types of decks, but it's very relevant here.
Yeah, I think really this deck is very well positioned to test Gurmag Anglers a lot faster than we've seen before. I think playing Bauble, Thoughtscour, and Faithless Looting just gives you way higher percentages to cast turn 2 Angler. And
I mean, the 2 Faithless Lootings kind of almost act as your Thoughtscour. Those Thoughtscour draws that are so powerful, you just get more of them because you have the 2 Faithless Lootings.
Right. Yeah, I mean, my biggest interest with the deck specifically is whether or not it's actually better to max Thoughtscours over Faithless Looting.
Interesting. If you're saying that you think that there could be situations where you'd rather do more Faithless Lootings?
Yeah, so I mean, I get that it's card disadvantage, but it's also card selection in a way that
Thoughtscour
just isn't.
Thoughtscour isn't. That's fair. I mean, it could be that you could just push it all the way, right?
Yeah, I mean, I was messing around in the weeks before Las Vegas with more Lightning Bolts and more Faithless Lootings. The biggest disadvantage probably of playing more Faithless Looting specifically is that it makes your mana requirements a little bit harder. You're certainly going to fetch Steam Vents a lot more often the more Faithless Lootings and Lightning Bolts you play, and that's not zero cost.
Okay. The next deck comes in third place is Humans. This is a deck that all 3 of us have played a lot of. We have Martin Hughes' list in front of us. Also, 30 GP top 8s is too many, guys. That's too many. That's all of them.
We were talking about that as well on or Saturday after he top 8'd.
It's like kind of unreal, right? Like 30. It's so many. Anyway. So this list kind of has some of the. I think this has the exact same. Oh no! It has one difference from the last list that we talked about, Michael. It has the one Dark Confidant. It has the one Keswick Malcontents. And then are they playing an extra Freelooter or are they playing an extra Reflector Mage?
I think 4 Reflector Mages has been just the stock.
Yeah, I was going to say I don't actually know that there are lists that play less than 4 Reflectors in the current metagame. But.
Oh, well, there were last time that I was looking at modern deck lists, they were playing 3, but both.
It's 3 Thalia. It was like this. It's just that some people are playing another 2-drop.
Is that what it is? Is that what I'm missing?
And some people are playing extra 4s.
Extra 4s. So what would that be?
People are playing like Restoration Angel.
That's what it is. I'm looking. That's what I'm missing is the 2 Restoration Angels.
Yeah, it's a 1 or sometimes a 2 of.
I remember now because we talked about Reflector Mage specifically in its interaction with that. I'm sorry, guys. I
think all the other lists in the top 32. Well, the next 3 lists in the top 32 are all playing Restoration Angel.
Okay.
It's usually over the Dark Confidant, right? Like I think that the Keswick Malcontents is a 1 of is not that untypical, but I think it's usually 1 Restoration Angel and 1 Malcontents instead of 1 Dark Confidant, 1 Malcontents.
What do you guys prefer?
I I was pretty happy with the Restoration Angel. I have not been particularly happy with Dark Confidant. Although I've never actually played it in the main deck. I've been siding it in different matchups, and out of the sideboard, haven't been happy with it. So I assume that in the main deck, I'm going to be happy with it even less often.
I had 2 in the sideboard, and I had a Restoration into the main the last time I played this deck, which was about 2 weeks ago, so it's been a while. And I think that my problem with my Dark Confidence is that one of the things that I really like about humans is you don't care what dies, but when your Dark Confidant dies, it actually is like a super feel bad.
Well,
I don't know.
I also think that Restoration Angel actually helps you more against control with this deck than Dark Confidant would, because against a Wrath, it's nice to have a 3/4 flash that you can kind of like rebuild from.
Yeah.
And against any kind of spot removal, it's nice to be able to actually save your creature from a spot removal spell. And like, honestly, getting renames off of meddling mages and like relooks off of Kite Self Rebooters is actually relevant.
Oh yeah, renames off of
and you
Meddling
go
Mage.
from you go from sort of the worst card possible against Electrolyze to maybe the best card possible against
Right.
Electrolyze.
Right.
So
And-
I think against
and-
Jeskai specifically, you probably miss the Restoration Angels a little bit.
And it really makes your Phantasmal images way better. The number of times that I Phantasmal imaged my Restoration Angels was pretty high, and I don't know that after sideboard I've ever Phantasmal imaged Dark Confidant.
Yeah, it's not as good in the Aether Vial deck.
Your
Like,
curve is
just
actually kind of
whack
insanely
shit,
high
but-
for Dark Confidant, to be honest with you. Like, most Dark Confidant decks you'll see play a lot of 1-mana spells. This deck, the average CMC is like 2.5. So, it's pretty sketchy.
I had my this week. I had an opponent bring in Ariok Champions against me. What decks do you guys typically board that in against?
Burn and Hollow One.
Yeah, right. I might board it in against Death Shadow as well.
Yeah, I was playing Scapeshift.
Yeah, I don't like it against Scapeshift, obviously. Like,
A little aggressive.
yeah, it's the chip damage from a 1/1 is just not going to matter enough. And honestly, you can block it a lot of the times, especially because post-board you'll have Bailoffs and things like that.
Yeah. So where do you guys? So we've all played this deck. None of us played it at this tournament. Why didn't you? I don't personally feel. I feel like this has a big targets on its head and it's easy to hate out. That's why I didn't play it.
Well, I think we've mostly proven that that's not the case, though, right? Like, I mean, people kept saying don't sleep on humans or whatever, but I think this was a tournament rather where I played against mostly decks that had good matchups against humans, and humans still did very well. I don't think it's actually that easy to hate out. I think their curves are very powerful, and I think that no matter what the matchup is, you can definitely win.
I don't know that I agree with that. I think so many people were playing humans that it just got its by volume more than anything. Not that, but the thing is that when aggro decks like this and like really powerful aggro decks, I mean, I would say that this deck is, I think you guys were talking about before, almost unfair. And when a deck like that's an aggro deck that just punishes everything, also happens to be just a very good deck without having to rely on those punishments, means that it's kind of like Tron, right? Like at some point its volume is just going to be like, you're not going to beat this X percentage of the time if X or Y happens, and X or Y is going to happen X percentage of the time, which will make up a large percentage of this deck.
I mean, no matter how many people are playing it, it's really hard to win 15, 40% matchups in a row.
Right. And I'm clarifying that by saying this is a very good deck. I'm just saying I don't think that it was a good choice for this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't think it was a good choice for this weekend because I do think that Jeskai is picking up in popularity, which I think is one of the few matchups that I really, really don't want to play.
I don't want to play Jeskai or Tron, but
I don't
think
want to play
the
Tron
fact that
either.
Humans still put up some pretty good results despite the metagame being quite hostile to it. Tells you that as things start to shift away from this a little bit,
It's going to be strong again.
it's going to be the best deck again.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
All I'm saying is if half the people who are playing Jeskai put it down to try to play something to beat Tron, this deck is instantly the best deck to play again. Like,
yeah,
Right.
Matt, I like Matt's point of that. Like it still did well, and I'm trying to make a counter argument to that. It's still fair. Like, I should be willing to admit that I'm wrong. I don't know that I'm wrong, but I should be willing to admit it if I am.
I mean, I guess we don't have exact numbers for like
Yeah.
conversion rate and stuff like that, but it's hard for me to be like, Well, a deck only put, one in the top 4, another in the top 16, and like 4 more in the top 32. What a
Right.
terrible call.
Right.
Well, it's also like, I mean, it's modern, right? So like, no matter how bad you assume the metagame is going to be for a deck, it's really going to be a lot of nonsense as well.
And the truth is that, like Michael said, humans has been the best deck. So all of those rounds where people just were like playing their pet decks, like a lot of those could be free rounds for those human players.
That's the
generally
best
speaking.
thing about humans by far is that your nonsense matchup is almost 100-0.
Right.
If your opponent's like doing something weird or cute, you mostly destroy it.
Yeah. Well, let's go on to the next deck we have, which is Clark Clan Ironworks. So this deck is broken, in my opinion, and I'll let Matt take it away.
Yeah, I mean, I do think it's certainly the most consistent turn 4 combo deck in Modern at the moment. Basically 100% if unmolested, and it has plenty of turn 3 draws, which is not something that can be said of the other turn 4 consistent combo decks, which are like, Scape Shift, and I think that might be the only other, well, I guess Burn, right?
Well, you could say that, what turn does Ad Nauseam go off? I guess it's not consistent.
It's unplayable.
Well,
it never
so
goes off
Ad
0
Nauseam is a
plays
consistent
meddling
turn 4
range.
combo deck for sure. It definitely is. But it has a really bad matchup against Thoughtseize, whereas this deck is incredibly resilient to anything that's trying to interact with it.
Dude, this deck
The only way to really interact with this deck is to kill them before they can assemble their combo.
Yeah. So, we've this podcast is well known for saying Mox Opal is the best card in Modern. That's one of the reasons Affinity is so powerful. Guys, this is the best Mox Opal deck, and Mox Opal is the best card in Modern, and this deck is broken. What is happening?
I would guess Ancient Stirrings is walking a tighter line right now than Mox Opal is.
Oh, you think it's Ancient Stirrings that could get the banhammer?
Well,
I mean, I don't
I
know
think
that
that this deck is maybe playable without Ancient Stirrings. I don't think it's playable without Mox Opal.
I don't even think that they'll ban either of those
I think
cards.
that's-
I think that they'll just ban Ironworks. Like, think of any deck that's
you
ever
think
played
they'll-
Ironworks has ever been fun or fair.
Do you think they will ban it because it's too good, or do you think they'll ban it because it takes too?
I think they'll ban it because it's too good. I actually think this deck is too good for Modern.
I
Interesting.
would rather unban more things than ban this.
That would certainly solve the problem. The problem with unbanning things, though, is it would definitely make KCI not the best deck if they unban the right things, right? But anything that they're going to ban that's going to be good against KCI is going to make the format much more of a glass cannon format than it already is.
Yeah, my problem is that for me, it's Ironworks has any deck it's ever been in is unfun and unfair, and it's just not good Magic in my opinion.
I don't think anybody's using KCI
Yeah.
as a value engine, but I don't think that specifically saying that this card is a combo card so it should be banned is a real argument.
That's what I'm saying. I'm saying that the gameplay of KCI specifically compared to gameplay of other combo decks is and maybe it's Scrap Trawler, maybe it's Mirror Retriever, I don't know. But I am anti-bans almost entirely. I just think that it's typically wrong. So if they could unban the right things, that'd be awesome. But watching people play this deck this weekend who were good with it, I think it will get the pod problem where it's actually the best deck by a pretty substantial margin, and it's hard to play. But once people learn to play it and they become Ironworks players, I think that this deck will take over.
Sure. I guess the biggest problem with this deck is that not a lot of people enjoy watching their opponent play. And you're going to have to sit there and watch your opponent play Magic for 5 to 10 minutes on some turns.
Yeah.
So I can certainly see that being a problem.
With that being said,
it's not something that afflicts me
I think
personally.
this-
I don't mind. I find the same enjoyment watching my opponent try to go off with KCI as I do, playing my own turns.
Sure.
But I get it.
So where do you guys agree with me? Do you guys think this is the best deck in Modern right now?
It is, but this deck actually is not that hard to hate out with sideboard cards versus something like Humans, which is
agree.
is probably the objectively best deck in Modern. Is very difficult to actually have sideboard cards against. You have to be playing a specific strategy that's good against them, and even then, it's not that good. Whereas KCI, if you decided you wanted to put 4 Damping Spheres and some graveyard hate and like Stony Silence or whatever in your sideboard.
I
you're
think
going to have
with
a good
KCI, it's much more about volume of cards than it is
Right.
about being good against them in
But
a
that's-
strategic sense.
But that's been
So
true of lots of
KCI
decks
is more
with
about-
deck in Modern, right? Like, you only have so
Sure.
many sideboard slots in Modern. That's like one of the problems.
Sure,
Yeah, but
sure,
the
I
problem
would
is a lot of the
definitely-
sideboard slots that are good against KCI are good against plenty of other decks as well. Like,
Okay.
it's not like Damping Sphere has no other matchups. It's not like Stony Silence and Rest in Peace have no other matchups that they're good, right?
Sure.
Like, being bad against Graveyard Hate and Artifact Hate makes you very vulnerable to sideboards in Modern.
That's fair.
Yeah, the main thing is I think you have to move away from the shatter effects and back towards actual Stonies.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you're trying to
Ancient
beat that,
Grudge does not beat this deck. Hooligan's Command does not beat this deck. Stop trying to do it that way.
yeah, absolutely.
I agree. I think that trying to. I mean, I tried to cast Ancient Grudges against this deck, so
I mean, you still play them if you have them, right? It's
right.
just
I'm just
you're not
saying
expecting it to
it didn't do anything for me.
Right.
So, all right, cool. Well, we got Spencer's maybe second ever call for bans.
Were you right on the first one?
I think it was Dramoka's Command. So no.
Did you call for the ban of Felidar Guardian? I felt like you did.
I
I
might
feel like
have.
everyone called for the ban of Floater Guardian.
I might have.
I didn't, for what it's worth. I actually really
mostly
enjoyed
before anyone had ever played a game with it. Like
Yeah,
Although
they should
to
have
be fair,
banned it just because they didn't
I actually would
know
have
it
been okay. with that.
existed and
I
never tested
actually
any games.
didn't start playing that format until much later than most people. I was taking a break from Magic at the time, so like I only played when Four Color Healy was a deck for maybe like a month before it got banned, and I wasn't tired of it at all.
Well, let's talk about the number one deck that has I don't think ever gotten a banning, and that's Tron. So we already talked about this deck a little bit. I want to just talk about some of the changes that this deck has undergone that I don't think people realize. So universally, this deck is playing like one World Breaker, two Ulamogs, and then just kind of being like a really streamlined deck. Where in the past, you would see black cards, you would see red cards, you would see a split between Ulamog and the 13-man Emrakul. Like people were trying all kinds of different stuff, and honestly, like I think this deck getting Ulamog the Ceaseless Hunger, all of the best versions of this deck since that's happened, in my opinion, have just played Ulamog. And I think that this deck, people are realizing that, and they're just not trying to be cute anymore.
Yeah,
That's-
it's mostly solved at this point, right? Like
Right, yeah. I think that people are done trying to be cute, and they're just like, okay, we're going to play like a couple Walking Ballistas, a World Breaker, two Ulamogs, and like go from there. And it's
What I like about go ahead.
Go ahead.
What I like about the transition to Mono Green Tron is we're just accepting that our the combo matchups are just not winnable, and that's not what we're trying to do with the deck. We're just assuming that the metagame is going to be more fair decks than combo decks, and honestly, your best recourse against those decks is just turn 3 Karn anyway.
Right.
But we're not trying to play things like Fatal Push, Collective Brutality. We're not not playing Witchbane Orb, things trying to hedge against like decks like Storm or whatever else.
yeah, you get sideboard Thought-Knot Seers, and you hope you win the die roll, and you hope your hands are great.
Yeah, I mean, you certainly do play the Thought-Knot Series, but what I like about that card specifically as an anti-combo sideboard card is that you bring it in against people that are trying to hate you out as well.
Right. No, I think the best thing this deck has gotten in the last couple of years is the ability to side into a much leaner deck.
Yeah, you don't have to mess around with some of the stuff in your main deck anymore, and you get
Well,
you
I
get a
think
really
just being able
streamlined.
you can side into a deck that's like Walking Ballistas, Wormcoil Engines, Thought-Knot Seers,
Seers and
Little
Thrag
Cards,
Tusks.
and Thrag Tusks.
Yeah.
Exactly. And like Blood Moon just isn't even good against that. It just doesn't do anything. You're about to turn 3 Blood Moon, and you never even have to O-Stone it.
Oh yeah, I mean,
It's just thanks for taking a turn off. Congratulations. Nice Damping Sphere.
yeah,
Right.
Nice Blood Moon. Whatever. I don't care.
yeah. I've not found Dampening Sphere to do anything against this deck.
No, you're
It
just trying
can
to side
if you
into,
have a
like,
clock
5-drop
alongside of it.
Right,
But
but it's really
without
hard
a
to
clock,
clock
it
along
doesn't
with
do
Damping
anything.
Sphere because you're playing a 2-mana do nothing, right?
Well, and not
That
only
has
that,
to
but it's
come
also
down before
making it
turn 3.
to where you can't do anything particularly degenerate either, right? Like you're basically
Right.
going to be like, I'm going to play a 3-on-3, a 4-on-4, and a 5-on-5 or whatever. That's often
I
not good enough
agree.
to
I
stop
mean-
Tron.
I
Well-
think the deck that won the Moto PTQ this weekend was someone won with 8 whack, I think.
It was
actually makes
it-
a lot of sense.
yeah, it was 8 Whack Goblins.
right. Given that like you're against Tron, we're not trying to like cast Blood Moons, we're just trying to kill him. And against
Right.
KCI, we're not really trying to cast, I mean, I'm sure it has some hate cards in the sideboard, but like, it's not really what we're trying to do. We're just trying to kill him.
Yeah, it was.
I kind of appreciate that.
It looked a little bit different than the AWAC list that I had seen in the past. It was like goblins, all goblins, and then 4 Burning Tree Emissary. But yeah, I mean that's one way to do it.
Yeah, well, the Burning Tree Emissaries have been pretty stock since they.
The Burning Tree Emissaries are normal. I'm not used to seeing all goblins.
Oh, sure, yeah. Well, when they play the actual 8 whack list, not like Revolt Zoo or whatever.
Is that what this is? I mean, I guess it's really for Goblin Grenade, right?
Yeah, that's the appeal. That card is actually very good.
Payoff though. That card is absurd.
Yeah. Right. No, I agree. I'm saying why they're doing it. Yeah, I like.
Yeah.
But
Legion Loyalist too.
It's surprisingly good and annoying, right?
Yeah, it doesn't look like it's going to be good, but if you ever played against Foundry Street Denizen with Legion Loyalist, it's like really, really hard to block.
Cool. All right. Well, that being said, that's Modern right now. So, what would you guys play and why? Michael?
Well, I think you should probably play KCI unless you hate it. So, I'm playing KCI.
Matt?
If I could go back and play the same tournament that I just played, I would have played Humans.
Okay. Well, if I have a tournament tomorrow, I would probably be trying Grixis Death Shadow, or I would run back Naya Titan Shift. That's probably the 2 decks I would consider. Let's talk about the tournament we just played, though, and let's actually start with you, Matt, because I want to talk about kind of the lessons that we've learned throughout this GP. You know, we're all going to GPs together this year. I'd like to take opportunities to reflect on our tournaments and like what we kind of learned and what we're going to try and improve in our next tournaments. And Matt, you kind of had 2 that are the same, but I want to start with coming back from a slide. So we've all been there at GPs where we're running hot. We feel like we're on top of the world. We're like convinced we're going to win this GP at this point, and then something goes wrong, right?
Right.
So what when we talk about a slide, like those are usually multi-loss rounds, right?
Right.
Like,
yeah. When you're losing, 3 or more in a row, I would say is a slide.
I would say when you lose 2 in a row and you're feeling it is where the slide begins.
Sure.
So how do you come back from that?
Well, I think it's important to realize what you're actually playing for, because sometimes it's not. It's not always just to win the tournament. If your only goal going to a Grand Prix is to win the tournament, then yeah, basically, you're gonna have a lot of bad records coming.
Should probably get a different hobby.
Yeah.
So what kind of things can you be playing for?
Well, so in my position, I actually got a really good season last season. I got 11 points in one season, so any pro point really helps for me. So that helped a lot in my being able to play the 15th round with a purpose.
Which is the other thing that you really
Which
learned.
is the other thing that I wanted to talk about. Yeah, I mean, so I started out 9-2, which was pretty good. I mean, I started out 6-2 in day 1. Won my first 3 on day 2, and I was like, oh wow, we're gonna have like a pretty deep run at this. Immediately lost 3 in a row, went to 9-5, and like at that point, I really, really didn't want to play the last round of Magic, because I've actually in my past I've actually never had an X4 or an X5 finish, because often when I start losing, some rounds, I just stop caring. Like if I know I'm not going to cash, I have a hard time actually focusing on the matches of Magic that I'm playing and trying my best.
Yeah. And I think that for a lot of our listeners, that can be relevant, right? Matt, you said that like this 11-point season actually made you care about this pro point, right?
Right. Well, and the other thing you got to know is that now that the seasons are starting whenever you're ready to start, like there's no start point for your seasons. You actually have no idea when that one pro point's going to matter. So
So now
they is playing all the time.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say is now our listeners, even if you're like not a bronze pro or you're not a silver pro, you're in my position, right? Those pro points could matter at any time, right? You might go spike an RPTQ and all of a sudden, like, man, you really wish that you had cared during those last rounds of that GP because you only get to attend so many of them.
Well, absolutely. And also the addition of bronze has actually made these 1-point finishes that you just randomly get a lot more important as well. Like,
right, because all of a sudden
didn't exist for a long time.
Yeah, now all of a sudden you're qualified for RPTQs. You have to buy at Grand Prix. It makes going to those events a little bit better, and that's a big deal.
Yeah, it's huge.
So Michael, Michael, before we get to actually, Matt, why don't you talk about playing the 15th round with purpose? Because you said that this is your first 1 point finish.
Right.
What motivated you, and how did you notice the motivation, and how did you enact that motivation?
Well, so I definitely still felt the weight of the 3 losses after I was 9-5. I was talking to Michael and I was like, man, I really don't want to play this round, but I know I should. It's like the responsible thing to do. And I don't know. Going into it, I just realized that like I said, you never know which 1 point finish is going to actually matter, right? Like maybe there's some world where I go to Sacramento and Indianapolis this season and get like 2 point finishes in both of those, and then like qualify for the Pro Tour as well, and that point doesn't matter for me. But there's also a lot more scenarios where I don't go to this one of these GPs or don't qualify for this Pro Tour, and the Pro point actually does matter.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So how did that translate to gameplay though? Like, how did that translate to you sitting down for your event, for your match, and playing good Magic?
Well, so it's actually really hard to notice when you're not playing good Magic because you don't actually care, right? Like, I don't actually when I don't care about a match, I don't notice myself actually playing worse. But I will say that I noticed my win percentage being significantly worse. So I know that there's things that I'm doing badly that I just don't catch.
Yeah, 2 of mine are slowing down, keeping my mechanics tight. I mean, 3 of mine, don't beat yourself. And it's funny that you mentioned that, like, you don't notice when you're playing bad Magic. I had Mason over my shoulder watching one of my matches, and I was like, stood up. I'm like, I don't know if I made a misplay. Like, I got super unlucky, and I got really upset that I was super unlucky, and I kind of walked away, and I sat down, and I just thought about that match, and I thought of 3 different misplays that I made that I didn't see in game. That I didn't see the misplays when I was sitting there. And I thought to myself, like, why? Like, you are playing bad Magic, and what is causing that, and how do you respond to that is really important. And you responded from your skid and your slide by saying, like, well, this round's going to matter, and I'm going to focus.
Right.
Cool. Michael, you have one of your lessons from GP Vegas being don't play reactive decks.
Yeah, this is just for Modern in general. I didn't play a reactive deck for this event, but like looking at the top 32, if you're playing a reactive deck, you're wrong. Don't do it. You don't hate yourself that much. Don't play green black X. Don't play blue white X. Don't do it. They're bad.
I mean, that's assuming that your goal is to win the tournament, right? Like we actually personally knew a lot of people that played Jund at that tournament that we could have told that it was a bad choice and they would have believed us, but still played it anyway.
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, I'm saying if results matter, don't play those decks.
Right.
Yeah. Caveat, unless you're Reed Duke or Jadine, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
But even they would get a lot more mileage out of playing something else. They just are allowed to play those decks because they're great.
Yeah, I don't think Reed is great because he's playing Jund.
Right.
He just likes Jund and he's great.
Right.
There's a difference. Exactly. Even Reed Duke shouldn't play Jund.
Yeah, he would do better playing something else or have a better advantage playing something else, but he is great enough to make it to where he can play his pet deck and be fine.
I actually didn't do what Matt did. I didn't want to play the 15th round, and I didn't refocus and like try and win it. Instead, I was just like flipping and frustrated, and one of the things I thought about kind of walking away from the table as I made these misplays, I was like, dude, just do the math, like count, like it's not hard. And this is something that I told myself a lot throughout that tournament, which is count, learn to count. And a lot of my misplays were due to math. And one of the things that, going into this last PPTQ season when I was like, I want to make sure that I'm continuing to qualify for PPTQs, I go in with that blue-white deck, and I, like, going into the event, I just said, slow down. Like, slow down, Spencer, slow your roll. And I didn't do that in this event. And, I don't know how to make myself do that through 15 rounds is what the truth is. And I've never had great GP finishes. Lots of day twos, very few caches. I think that I need to learn how to deal with those long days, Michael.
Yeah, it's really tough, honestly. It's a tough thing to get better at, and I think a big part of it is just trying to, like, just not look at the day as a whole sometimes. I think just trying to play around.
your day.
and then
Yeah, I mean,
you just sit down and try to play another round, and then you just try to sit down and play another round, and eventually you're done. Like, I think especially this event, at about at like 1
Dude,
p.m. that
it
you're going
was
to be here
it was
till
rough.
11. And I think that, like, if you get really caught up in how annoyed you are by that, it's not helping, at least.
Matt, what were
well,
you gonna say?
I would just say that the GP events are always long. They are definitely hard to play in the last, few rounds, but it's hard for everybody, right? It's not just you. You'll notice, like, when you play in the last few rounds of a GP, your opponents are playing worse too. It's not like everybody else has some secret that they're just playing optimally.
Well, I
and
don't think
you're just playing
everybody else
badly.
does, but I do think that the players that do their best are going to be better at it.
They are going to be better than Joe Schmo off the street, right? Like, of
That's
playing that many
right.
matches of Magic in a row, but
But
it's
I
still
want to
going
be.
to wear on them,
I know, but what I'm saying is I want to be better than Joe Schmo off the street.
right? Yeah, I agree. I think one of the
I
big
don't
secrets in my
I
in my
don't even think.
experience,
Go ahead.
one of the big things in my experience is actually getting food during an event. Like, if you can get something real to eat rather than just like eating, a snack or whatever kind, like, it actually really helps a lot. Preferably not something like too greasy to make you fall asleep, but I know personally I get very tired if I don't eat anything. So
Yeah, I need to find what works for me, and I think that the truth is that not only am I'm sure people will disagree with this, but I feel bad at it. Not that I'm not good at it; it's that I'm actively bad at focusing for that long. And one of the things about PPTQs is they're like the perfect length for me. I get like super hyped. I get a break for for my draws, and then I get to play the top 8 that I get to hype myself up for again. And I never can feel the hype train going at GPs. Like, the between rounds is so long that I never get into like a rhythm. Does that make sense?
it does make a lot of sense. Yeah, I mean, I have that problem as well. Whenever I'm playing a GP that has a huge amount of downtime, it's hard to actually get in a rhythm. Like, honestly, in Memphis, the downtime between rounds was like sub 15 minutes. It was actually kind of unbelievable. And that certainly was nice. But as you play more of them, you kind of get used to the extra time between rounds. I think not waiting in anticipation of the next round helps a lot as well for me.
I think that's one of my problems. So I need to learn, and I actually put on here. I was like, didn't learn this. I actually want advice from my co-hosts. Michael, do you have any additional advice?
I guess my biggest thing is I try not to really pay attention to the clock after the round. But just, try to think of it as an opportunity to just kind of sit and bullshit, hanging out with friends. Sorry, excuse me.
No, you're right.
Well, that's kind of what I was saying with the don't wait in anticipation of the next round.
Like, we're just, just hanging out, having a good time, talking about our last round, talking about whatever. Just trying to enjoy the company of the people I'm with, and outside of that, like complaining about it doesn't help. And if I can just keep myself in a better headspace, like, just in terms of not even like staying focused, but just like if I can just kind of feel happier or a little more peppy in general, I think I play better, because it's just easier to play well when you're feeling good, and feeling good extends beyond like oh man, my nutrition is on point or whatever. It like a lot of it is just trying to like physically adjust your attitude.
This is actually really good advice. I'm really glad that we did this on the podcast, because I think what I'm learning and what I've learned about myself is that time in between the rounds is really the part for me that I need to fix, and figuring out how I deal with that part specifically, because that is the part that I feel like is messing with me. So, and you know what? Like, maybe I'm not managing my expectations of myself very well, but like, I don't really care about day 2 in Grand Prix. I want to cash them and get pro points, and I need to figure out, like, I already know that I can day 2 a GP. I want to move past that. I want to be better than that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, it does. I think that my takeaway from that is that wanting it more and being more upset doesn't help.
Right.
And if I lose, I lose. And if I lose because I'm stupid, I'm upset that I was stupid, but I'm not necessarily upset that I lost.
Yeah, and it was really funny. I forgot to pay for a pact this weekend, which is, it might be my first time ever. Uh,
Sure. You
and
know,
I was like, I was upset. My opponent's like, "Hey man, I'm so sorry." Like, I'm like, "Why are you sorry? You don't need to be sorry, dude. Like, you did nothing wrong. I am upset with myself because like I'm better than that, and I should be better than that." And it's I think that the advice that we got in this segment was really helpful for me. So, um,
Well, another thing, and I'm not exactly sure how anybody else could take away from this, but one thing I've noticed recently is it's such an advantage to play lots of events, like even beyond the just getting more tries at it. It's actually an advantage because you know that you have more tries at it, right? Like
right,
I don't have to get so upset because I'm like, oh man, I blew my opportunity to like make pro points or cash in this GP because
right,
there's another one
yeah,
next week.
right. And
I
last year,
blew my opportunity for 2 weeks. Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
Yeah,
No, this is a really good point, and this is something that I noticed. As I was looking towards, Sacramento, it was like, oh, I'm gonna play. Of the next year of Magic, I'm probably gonna play what 9, 10 GPs, hopefully.
right.
And that just means that yeah, this one didn't go well, but if I play well and it averages out, I will get what I'm hoping for as long as I do the right things and fix the problems that I notice that I'm having as I'm getting into going to Grand Prix regularly. This is new for me. Like Matt and Michael will tell you, I don't go to a lot of Grand Prix.
Right.
Like
It puts so much less pressure on one individual
right,
event. It really does help your headspace, like
yeah.
as
So
far as, you know.
I'm really excited for Sacramento, whereas I'm not. Like Vegas is kind of already in my rear view mirror. It's like, oh yeah, that happened. Like you got back on the day 2 train. Like just do that, as much as Michael Hinderocker, and do other great things, and you'll be good.
That seems tough. Almost
This-
nobody does that, I would
I
say.
was gonna say, is there a
Michael,
person on the planet that has as high of a day 2 percentage as Michael with the number of Grand Prix he's played?
I would be actually shocked if he's not at least in the top 4.
People in the world, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
I missed like 1 of 30, so it would be surprising.
So
But that being said, I think that like even more than like, oh hey, you can just move on to the next event. I think the main thing is like, what I would say is if you don't get to play as much, still putting pressure on yourself in like a I have to do well at this event kind of way just doesn't.
it's just
help you.
unfair to you. It's unfair.
Yeah,
Yeah.
It's both unreasonable, but it's more than that. It's just like even in the moment, I don't think
Yeah.
that like
It's
trying
specifically,
to
yeah,
beat
detrimental.
yourself. You can't like abuse yourself into playing better. That's just not how this works.
Yeah.
So make sure that you take time to enjoy hanging out with friends and
Yeah.
talk between rounds and just try to keep it light.
Yeah.
That's probably the big takeaway. I agree. Although that is easier said than done in my experience. When I
Yeah.
when I have an event
Yeah,
that I
I'm
care about,
not-
that it's
yeah.
not like RPTQs, for instance, I actually find those to be very stressful just because of the way that I make them, right? Like I put a lot of pressure on that event because there's not another opportunity. Like this is the one shot to qualify for this
Right.
particular Pro Tour.
And I'm not saying it's an easy thing to do. I'm just saying that it's not a helpful thing.
I think one of the
Yeah,
problems
I
that
100% agree with that.
we could fix, Matt, is looking at GPs and PT, like the GPs and the PTQs at GPs, like maybe realizing that those are the same as that RPTQ for us, and that we need to recognize that we do have more opportunities, because sometimes I do the same thing. I will say though that I don't typically have the pressure of any individual event, other than I feel like, because I actually did have that problem in Denver the last Standard Grand Prix. I cared way too much, so I tried to kind of step back and just be like, whatever happens, happens. But I feel like I went too low this time, right? Where it was like bad Magic play, because it was like I wasn't putting enough importance on any individual match.
Sure.
Like I really felt like
it was
just
it was
playing.
interesting because like I feel like Memphis was like the one GP where I truly was like I just really didn't have any preconceived notions of what was going to happen at the GP. Like I mostly was playing a deck that I'm like, yeah, this seems like a completely medium deck. There's almost no way I'll get a good finish with it. I'll probably day 2 and then like, just have a really middling result with it. And like, I don't know. I feel like I played quite a bit of good Magic that weekend because it probably a lot to do with because of that, right? Like,
yeah. All right. Well,
And
that was
also because our deck was like way beyond medium and was actually great.
yeah, it was a much better metagame call than I anticipated. I do agree with that.
But I
But, I
yeah,
mean, there was
I
almost
can
no-
agree with.
it was really hard to predict that from my point of view, right? Because I didn't have the love for the deck that you had. And I also, I'd played the same matches that you did where we had a pretty middling record.
Sure. I think in general, a lot of the time when you're testing for events, I don't really care what my record actually is. I just care how I think the deck feels because I trust myself not to play really bad decks.
Right. That's fair.
I agree with that for the most part.
All right.
But
Well,
that being said, I even during the GP, I don't think the deck actually felt that good. It was fine.
Sure.
You guys are funny.
Sorry.
So that's it for this week for the training rounds. Thank you guys. That was helpful for me. So I have something to think about. Even going into the RPTQ this weekend, I'm actually now a little bit more excited for the RPTQ. So thank you. I appreciate it. Let's just really quick. If you want to support the podcast directly, go to patreon.com/ccmtg. The money goes towards the co-hosts. It goes towards the Mason. It goes for helping people pay for events. It goes towards equipment. I need to get Matt a new headset. I need to get Matt a new computer. There's costs.
I think lighting really, unless I'm gonna change my name to like the shadowy figure or whatever on Twitter.
Yeah, we'll have to. I have extra lights in here. I'll just bring some to your house probably.
Just buy Matt some ring. It'd be great.
We'll just get a black light.
Sure. I actually probably have some black lights somewhere.
I mean, I'll just buy you a flashlight and you can do what Wyatt was doing last week.
Yeah.
Just tell spooky stories.
Yeah.
So, we're still in that place where we're switching between Card of the Week and Pro Tour exclusive episode. Pro Tour exclusive episode is only $100 per month away, so really not that much. At this level, we'll do an exclusive podcast for all the patrons for each Pro Tour that, if nobody's qualified, we'll get somebody in there that is qualified to talk about their testing process. And we'll do a before. Mason wants to do a before and after episode kind of situation, kind of put it into one show. So, that'll be a really fun, post-produced content for me and Mason to play with. But we're really excited to do it. We just, it's time is money, guys. Let's be honest. But I just want to say that I'm really thankful for our patrons. Just kind of making it possible for us to do this has just been amazing. You would think that the $400 to $500 we get a month is no big deal, but I mean it pays for a lot of Magic. A lot of stuff. Entry fees to GPs. It pays for all kinds of stuff. So it really does mean a lot. So I just want to say thanks. Where can people find us? So you can find me on Twitter at Spencer38. You can find Michael at MagicMikeMTG. You can find Matt at The Witch Cling. You can find Mason at Mason E. Clark. You can find the podcast at CCMTG. You can like us on Facebook. Just search Constructive Criticism. Join the Constructive Criticism family where there's tons of other listeners that are chatting in that Facebook group. You can join the Discord. The link is just on the bios page at constructivecriticism.com. You can even join us by tweeting at us with hashtag Would That Be Good. Hashtag Would That Be Good is our Twitter outreach program. If you tweet it, we'll read it. And this week we got quite a few. So, should we just get started?
Yeah, let's dive in.
All right. Had a great day. Had a great off day. Watched Netflix and lots of modern and standard testing. Hashtag Would That Be Good. What are you watching on Netflix right now, Michael?
I have watched a whole bunch of stuff recently, but right now I am watching The Killing, which is quite good.
Okay. Matt, what are you watching?
I actually don't have anything that I'm currently watching on Netflix. I finished the second season of Jessica Jones finally, and it was quite good.
Cool. Have you watched all of the Marvel stuff?
Most of it. I couldn't get through Luke Cage, and I haven't watched Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Okay.
But yeah, I've watched a lot of that kind of stuff.
I know that you're a big Flash fan, so.
Yeah. That's not Marvel, that's DC, but yeah.
I know, but I've been in the superhero genre. I was going to bring up that I'm rewatching Arrow, which is why I said it.
Great.
Which is really fun for me. I really like that show. My wife will watch it with me, so that's one we watch together. And then I'm also rewatching New Girl so that I can finish it.
Yeah, I rewatched that one maybe 6 months ago. It's really good.
Dude, it's so funny. I forgot how good the first couple seasons of that are.
Oh, yeah.
I literally am busting a gut watching this again. So
yeah, I watched I don't remember which episode it was, but it was in the first season, and I like threw up laughing the second time around that I watched it.
That towel episode where like gets me ever. If you guys just Google towel clip new girl, like that is my wife and I every single day. You think this is your towel? It's great. Magic Mike MTG, I'm definitely in your camp on Cryptic Command. You are not falling on the sword alone. Hashtag would be good. I didn't know about this because I wasn't on the episode, but Michael and I had a conversation. I'm also Team Cryptic Sucks right now.
I think the problem is that it's not Team Cryptic Sucks right now. Michael's just like Cryptic Command is objectively a bad card. We've talked about this before, and he's like
Team Cryptic Sucks.
Oh, I'm not on
now.
that team.
It just sucks. Well, you shouldn't play Cryptic Command in Modern.
I believe that PVDDR should do this commercial probably as Friend 3. Hashtag that would be good. If you guys haven't seen this, it's a commercial written for Olive Garden after a bot watched 1,000 hours of Olive Garden commercials. So it's pretty funny. You guys should check it out. And PD should definitely be in the commercial because he loves his Olive Garden. Won a game of Standard on Mold of 4 with Black Red. Sure, I only made 4 or 5 real decisions, but that game, but as a friend one told me scoreboard, and then we have some people talking about games that they had won on low hand counts. I have won a game on a Mold of 3 with Jund against Bant Mythic Conscription. So biggest scoreboard.
Well, I would say you probably had almost no decision in that game, right? Like
I did.
Mulliganing actually does mean you just have no decisions. Like you're just okay. These are the cards that I have actually drawn this game.
Yeah.
Here you go.
Play the land, cast the spell.
As Adrian said, scoreboard. I love that too because like I was playing Birds of Paradise because I'm an idiot in that Jund deck because I didn't know how to deck build back then. So not only like did it have 0 decisions, but my deck was bad. So
sure.
Pineapple fried.
Makes it even better when your opponent is looking at you like, I'm losing to this, and you mold the.
Yeah, it was great. 3. I molded 3.
Mold the whatever.
All right.
Casey has a story about like killing someone on turn 3
I won on a Mold of 3. I won on a Mold of 3 for the second time in my life, very recently. Just like probably 2 days before the GP, I won on a Mulligan to 3 with Hollow One against mono red Stompy, like the Moon Stompy deck, and he also played a Chalice of the Void for 1 on turn 2 and invalidated 2 of the 3 cards that I had in my hand at the time.
And you should record a video of that game.
And then he angered the gods me on turn 4 and killed 2 creatures with it.
Yeah, record a video of that game from your replays.
Yeah, if I can find it, I will.
That's sweet.
It's mostly just me like eventually drawing a Goblin Lore like on turn. I drew Goblin Lore on 3. Managed to put a Hollow One into play, and then he died from just taking 4 damage every turn.
That's just a great video to post, though. Like that's a thing that should be on the internet.
This is why you don't play prison decks because like sometimes you just face a 4/4.
Pineapple fried rice. Hashtag with the good at Spencer the H. So I just want to be clear that there's barbecue pork Chinese sausage fried rice on this menu. Why would you ever pick pineapple?
I don't know that. What you just said sounded really good though.
I'm not coming down on anti-pineapple on this one. I'm just saying that like the thing that I just said sounds way better than pineapple fried rice. The next one is my wife won the Vegas dinner choice competition. Nacho Daddy is in fact hashtag would be good. I'm not gonna lie, those nachos were really, really good. Like really good, Michael.
Yeah, like enough to make me want to eat nachos.
Dude, do you not like nachos?
Medium.
Medium on nachos. You're medium on most things, Michael. So
it's true. I don't disagree.
Deck looks.
Nachos don't move the needle.
Oh man, nachos always move my needle. Deck looks sweet, and I just put all the pieces I was missing. Thanks. Hashtag would that be good? This is Jared Pohl replying to Lobert from Common Knowledge, talking about his corrupt control deck. They're recording a podcast for that right now, so I'm really excited to listen to it. Yeah. Do you guys check it out? Do you guys know what we're talking about?
Stuff looks sweet.
I didn't see it.
Corrupt and Consume Spirit.
Yeah.
Theme deck.
Okay.
We're gonna blaze them out.
Yeah, it's pretty sweet. After answering a series of continuing questions about my RPTQ Sunday, commenting that they were going above and beyond, WC Podcast 1 said anything to help you and ourselves get better at Magic. If you listen to @CCMTG, you should listen to @DWC Podcast 1. Hashtag that'd be good. I love promoting other content creators, so I'll have to check out this podcast because I'm always trying to get better at Magic, and I love to hear that there are others trying to do the same. So, all right. Hey, everyone. At CKMTG Podcast, MTG has their own Pauper MTG Facebook group. I just wanted to announce that on the show. So please, and this was a reminder to myself, please join the group if you love Pauper, as they're trying to grow a Pauper community of their own. You can find the link on the website as well as on that tweet. So Andrew says, man, I miss competitive MTG. I miss hanging out with friends and celebrating their success. Excited to steal some modern cards and get back at it. Why would you pick modern, Andrew? I blame Mason for this.
Fair.
Yeah, that's who I like to blame for stuff. Michael, what'd you learn this week?
Well, I learned, looking at the top 32 again, I learned really how dominant both KCI and Mono Greentron were.
They were super dominant. Like super
kind of
duper dominant.
To see decks actually put up results quite like that. It is not typical.
Interesting.
Yeah. I mean, if you just look at the points that Mason sent us, like it kind of tells that story, right?
Yeah, I mean, this is just always true. When you're playing an event, it's oftentimes a lot harder to tell what exactly is actually doing best than when you're like watching coverage or looking at the standings of a round or whatever.
Mason live tweeted that he always has turn 3 Tron. He's so good. Hashtag with the good. I think Mason's drunk, everybody. So we're going to have to end the show and take him to the doctor. Underage drinking is allowed. Thank you, everybody, so much for listening, and we'll see you guys all next week.
See ya.